Do you know what wet food actually does to your cat when they eat it every single day? Not just in the bowl, not just in the moment they're eating, but inside their body, in their organs, in their digestion, in the way they carry weight, grow their coat, and behave around you. Most cat owners think wet food is just a treat, something you bring out when your cat is being picky or when you want to spoil them a little. A reward, not a routine. But that assumption might be costing your cat more than you realize. Because the truth is, when you start feeding wet food daily, consistently, correctly, something begins to shift, and it happens faster than most people expect. Within days, certain things start changing internally. Within weeks, you'll start seeing it with your own eyes. And some of what changes might genuinely surprise you. We're going to go through everything, the biology, the science, and the things most pet food companies don't want you to think too deeply about. And at the end, there's one mistake that can quietly undo all of these benefits if you're not careful. To understand what wet food does for your cat's hydration, you have to go back further than the house cat. You have to go back to their wild ancestors, desert-dwelling hunters. Cats didn't evolve drinking large amounts of water from bowls. They hunted small prey like mice, birds, and insects, and those animals were made up of around 70 to 75% water. That means every single meal your cat's ancestors ate was also their main source of hydration. Their entire biology evolved around this pattern. Their kidneys, urinary tract, and metabolism are all designed to process moisture that comes directly from food, not from separate drinking. Now compare that to modern dry kibble, which contains only about 8 to 10% moisture. That creates a huge hydration gap between what your cat's body expects and what it actually receives every day. And unlike dogs, cats have a naturally low thirst drive. They don't compensate by drinking enough water. So even if your cat has a water bowl, they are often still mildly dehydrated without you realizing it. That chronic dehydration puts constant stress on their kidneys and urinary system. Their urine becomes more concentrated, which increases the risk of urinary crystals, bladder inflammation, and even serious blockages, especially in male cats. These problems are incredibly common, and they're not random. They're the predictable result of a long-term hydration mismatch. When you switch to wet food, which contains around 75 to 80% moisture, that gap starts to close. Your cat's urine becomes more diluted, their kidneys don't have to work as hard, and the entire urinary system begins to function the way it was originally designed to. This single shift can significantly reduce the risk of urinary issues and support long-term kidney health. It's one of the most important changes you can make, and everything else builds on top of it. The next change you'll notice might not be glamorous, but it's one of the most honest indicators of your cat's internal health. Look at the litter box. Cats on dry food often produce larger, smellier, and less consistent stools. Sometimes they go more often than expected, sometimes the texture varies, and many owners assume that's just normal. But it's not. It often means the digestive system is struggling to properly break down and absorb nutrients from heavily processed food. A significant portion of dry kibble passes through the body without being fully used. When you switch to wet food, the stools usually become smaller, firmer, and more consistent. That's not a coincidence. It means your cat's body is actually absorbing more of what it eats. Less waste, because there's less wasted nutrition. The digestive system starts working more efficiently, and many cats with irregular digestion show noticeable improvement within a couple of weeks. Another major shift happens with your cat's weight, and this surprises a lot of owners. Even when they're feeding the same portion size, cats on dry food can slowly gain weight over time. That's because kibble is extremely calorie-dense and often high in carbohydrates. But cats are obligate carnivores. Their bodies are built to run on protein and fat, not carbohydrates. When cats eat high-carb diets, their blood sugar spikes quickly and then drops, which can trigger hunger again soon after eating. So your cat eats, feels full for a short time, and then starts seeking food again. Meanwhile, excess carbohydrates are stored as fat. Wet food changes this completely. It's higher in protein, lower in carbs, and contains a lot of moisture, which helps your cat feel full for longer. The result is a cat that eats, feels satisfied, and is less likely to overeat. Over time, this helps maintain a healthier weight without constant portion control battles. Your cat's coat is another place where the difference becomes obvious. A healthy cat should have soft, smooth, and slightly glossy fur. If your cat's coat feels dry, rough, or dull, it's often a sign of nutritional imbalance. Skin and fur require high-quality protein and essential fatty acids to stay healthy. Dry food, especially heavily processed kibble, can lose a significant portion of these nutrients during manufacturing. Even if nutrients are added back in, they're not always absorbed efficiently. Wet food, on the other hand, tends to preserve more of these nutrients in a usable form. After a few weeks on a consistent wet food diet, many cats develop noticeably softer, shinier coats. Shedding may decrease, and that dry texture starts to fade. It's not instant, but when it happens, it's very clear. Then there's behavior, especially around food. If your cat seems obsessed with food, constantly begging, meowing, or acting like they're starving even after eating, it might not just be personality. It can be biological. Dry food digests quickly and doesn't provide lasting satiety, especially with its low moisture and higher carb content. That creates a cycle where your cat never feels fully satisfied. Wet food breaks that cycle. The higher protein and moisture create a stronger, longer-lasting feeling of fullness. Over time, many cats become calmer around food. Less begging, less pacing, less food anxiety. They eat, feel satisfied, and move on. However, there is one important risk that many cat owners don't think about, and it matters more than you might expect. Wet food cannot be handled the same way as dry food. Once it's left out at room temperature, bacteria can begin to grow quickly. Unlike kibble, which can sit out for hours, wet food should not be left in the bowl for more than 1 to 2 hours. After that, it needs to be removed and discarded. Any unused portion from the can should be covered and stored in the refrigerator and ideally used within 24 to 48 hours. There's also one small detail that makes a big difference. Cats prefer food that's closer to body temperature. Cold food straight from the fridge often smells less appealing to them. Slightly warming it, either with a few seconds in the microwave or by adding a bit of warm water, can make it much more appetizing. None of these precautions are reasons to avoid wet food. In fact, everything we've covered still stands. Better hydration, improved digestion, healthier weight, a softer coat, and calmer behavior. These are real, noticeable changes. But the difference between wet food improving your cat's health and causing issues comes down to how you handle it. Get that part right, and you're giving your cat something their body has been designed for since the days of their wild ancestors, when every meal naturally provided exactly what they needed to survive and thrive. At the end of the day, your cat can't tell you what's missing from their diet, but their body shows you in quiet ways every single day. In their energy, in how often they visit the litter box, in the softness of their coat, and even in the way they look at you after a meal. These small signals are easy to ignore when everything seems normal, but normal doesn't always mean optimal. When you start feeding wet food the right way, you're not just changing what's in their bowl, you're finally aligning their diet with what their body has expected for thousands of years. And once that alignment happens, everything else starts to fall into place more naturally than you might expect. So the real question isn't whether wet food is better as a treat or a reward. The real question is whether you're willing to give your cat what their biology has been quietly asking for all along. Because the difference between a cat that simply gets by and a cat that truly thrives often comes down to small daily choices that seem insignificant at first. Feed it properly, handle it correctly, and pay attention to the details, and you'll start to notice something powerful, a calmer, healthier, more balanced cat that isn't just living with you, but genuinely feeling better every single day.